Yeah, I'm Rachel. I am, well, until this week, I was head of UX content at Flow. As of this week, I'm design director of Flow. So for those that don't know, Flow is a women's health app. And it helps people track their cycles so that they can either just sort of get to know their body better or understand when their periods are coming, or people use it to understand their fertility and help them get pregnant. Yeah, I've been here since November now. So what I'm here to talk to you today about is content ops, which is what my book is largely about. So I'll kind of just run through a bit of an intro to content ops and then kind of open the floor to questions, really. So firstly, what is content ops? I know it sounds like a bit of a boring term, and to be honest, I kind of thought it was before I went and worked in a content ops role. I was working for a design consultancy, and I didn't actually realise that a lot of what I was doing was operational work until I read a job description for a content ops role at BT and thought, oh, that's pretty much what I'm doing in my role. So operations is a core part of leadership, but you kind of need it to deliver your product content strategy. And essentially, it's kind of about making sure you've got the right people, process, tools, and systems in place to help the team work effectively. But it also helps you scale impactfully, because if you scale with kind of poor foundations, you're just scaling, you're just building on top of a mess. So getting those efficient and effective systems and tooling and processes in place early on will help you scale whilst having kind of maximum impact for your organization. So I kind of like to think about ops in these buckets, really. So you've got kind of people, you've got capability, you've got kind of tools and systems, you've got processes, and then you've got your kind of organizational alignment. So going through each of these, your people will be things like understanding, who do you need to recruit, what projects are coming up that you need to kind of find people for, what kind of projects are they, how are you going to recruit, how are you going to onboard people once they join the teams, how are you going to get them sort of set up for success, how do you foster collaboration between people, and then how do you keep the team happy, so how do you keep them engaged and make sure that your team sort of satisfaction scores are high. And then you've got capability. So this is about understanding the skills in your team. Have you got the right skills in the right places? Have you got skill gaps that you might need to recruit for or train for? How do you run that training? How do you coach people? How do you help people with facilitation skills so that they can run crits and workshops and initiate kind of ideation sessions and things? Then you've got your processes, so your kind of workflows and ways of working. Might also be your frameworks and guidance, and the sort of standards and governance you have around content. And then also maybe like you have some templates that repeatable things that you're always doing, like A/B testing or writing up case studies. So how do you kind of create standardized templates for those? Tools and systems. So this is making sure you've got the right tools to do the job. This might be your design tools like Figma, or it might be your collaboration tools. It might be procuring new ones or assessing new tools against the ones you've got at the moment. It might be providing your team with like simple tools to make their jobs easier, or thinking about like things like design systems and how do you build out those kind of platforms to help people do their jobs more efficiently. And then you've got the organizational alignment, so things like budgets, working cross-functionally, identifying efficiency saving areas. So can you reduce the effort it takes or the time it takes to do things so that your team can work more efficiently? How do you advocate for content, and how do you demonstrate the impact of content to your wider organization? So pretty much all the things that sit in and around doing the actual work itself. So if you want your teams to kind of be free to do content design, we need to do all this stuff for them, or we need to take it all away from them. Otherwise, they're spending half their lives kind of navigating around a lot of these issues or taking on the role of things like advocacy themselves. So I asked this question on Twitter just over a year ago. How much does your company focus on the operational side of content strategy and design? How do content designers get their work done? Tools they use, capability, and how they work with others. And as you can see, pretty much no one was focusing a lot on content ops. So 40% said they barely thought about it, 11.5% didn't have a content team, and 30.8% thought about it a little bit. So there's obviously lots of room for improvement here. So the things that operations isn't, so it's not the actual definition of your guidance, so it's not the actual kind of definition of your like voice or your tone or your strategic direction. It's not managing the content itself, and it's not managing the people themselves. These are all things that kind of sit within strategy and leadership, but they don't kind of fall into ops. So how do ops and strategy work? So I like to think of strategy as kind of your planning and implementation. So your strategy is your kind of plan of action to achieve a desired outcome. So you're going to come up with the plan, then you're going to implement it. And I like to think of ops as kind of running alongside this. So it enables that planning to happen, and then it optimizes the implementation of it. So if you think about, I know it's not quite this linear, but I like to think of strategy as kind of focusing, then laying the foundations, then defining who does the work and how, and then measuring it and maintaining it. So if you think about that as a kind of stepped process, at each of those points, a strategist has kind of clear jobs to do. So they have to understand the brand and the business and what the users are trying to achieve. They have to establish the brand voice, what format the content might take, what kind of frameworks they might need, and guidance. Identify who will do the work and how it will be done, how success will be measured, and how the work will be updated and tested once it's live. So ops can support this all the way through by things like facilitation, creating guidance and governance, identifying skill gaps, organising training, simplifying processes, selecting tools, creating those frameworks, creating things like content audits. So there's lots of, if you think about a strategist and an ops person, they could be one person, although it's a lot of work for one person, but equally they could be working together. And actually when I was at BT, I was kind of the right-hand woman to the head of content. So, you know, she created the strategy, and then I looked after the operational side of it. So we don't always need to have an ops person or an ops team to think about how we deliver the work, but our teams can start to think more operationally and think about what are the big barriers to doing the work and how do we remove those barriers. So the first step in doing this is to identify the team pain points and understand what those challenges and problems are. Now, when I started in my content ops role at BT, the things I wanted to kind of ask, questions I wanted to ask were kind of what content designers should be doing versus what were they doing? What was the desired outcome versus the actual outcome? What were the biggest pain points? What was already being done about that? What category do they fit into? And what were people saying? So sometimes those kind of verbatims are really, really crucial and really, really things that we need to listen to. They reveal a lot. So I kind of set about doing this in a kind of design discovery way. I interviewed the teams, I ran pain points, workshops, stakeholder interviews, surveys. I did a time tracking survey where I asked people to record how long they were spending on each task over the period of like 2 or 3 weeks, so I could see what were the kind of biggest time drains. Did some process mapping, assessed tools, and ran some pre-mortems. And a pre-mortem is where you ask the team to sort of project themselves forwards 6 months, 9 months, and say, okay, it's 6 months time, everything's gone wrong, what's gone wrong? And you get them to kind of say, okay, well, here's all the things that could go wrong. And then you get them to think about, well, why has that gone wrong? And then you go back and you come up with solutions to kind of mitigate those things happening. So let's just say the team says, 6 months time, we haven't made any progress in this organisation. Why? You know, they might come up with a million reasons as to why They're all the things that are happening right now. They're all those problems that are happening right now that they need fixing. So once you've kind of asked all these questions and got all this information, it's really important to summarize it in a way that you can then share with stakeholders, because if you want people to buy into ops work and you want them to support it and you want them to give you kind of headcount or budget to solve some of these problems, you need to be able to tell the story. Luckily, we're content strategists, we're good at telling stories. So I created essentially a journey map. So I looked at each sort of stage in a content designer's life at BT, from joining a squad through to kind of developing their careers and skills. And then I looked at the action. So what should they be doing and what were they doing? What those outcomes, current outcomes and desired outcomes were. What was already being done, the quotes, what the biggest pain points were. So in terms of like tools and systems, processes, ways of working, capability. And then I left a big gap at the bottom for opportunities. So what could we do to fix these? And I kind of, this is the one I started to complete, but the thing that really kind of tells the story were those kind of key quotes that I pulled out. So this person said, I was a bit confused when I joined my squad as to what my priorities were and why. So there's a sort of clear problem there with people not being up and ready to kind of start work and feeling a bit confused. And actually, you know, there's a really opportunity there to in the onboarding stage to help kind of alleviate that and get people up and running a lot more quickly. So once you've kind of got all that information and all those insights, then you need to start coming up with potential solutions. And the best way to do that is collaboratively, because, you know, I could have gone in and said, oh, here's 10 solutions as to how you can fix these. It's just my kind of opinion. Actually, it's a lot more powerful if the team can come up with those solutions themselves. So the best way to do it is to do it through group ideation. So I started with some problem statements or some sort of problems that I pulled from my experience map. This was part of the onboarding. So it takes ages for content designers to get Figma access. Content designers and product designers aren't sure how they should work together. And some product designers are not used to working with content designers. These are probably issues that people recognize from many of the places they've worked in. And the best way to kind of ideate against these is to flip them into how might we statements. So as much as like we would when we were solving a product problem, we can do this with our own teams. So I kind of flipped them into these. So how might we ensure all content designers have immediate Figma access? How might we communicate how content designers and product designers should work together? And how might we get more designers used to working with content designers? So you can then take each of these and spend a few minutes on each, coming up with lots of solutions together. So this example here, how might we ensure content designers have immediate Figma access? Straight away, the teams come up with 5 different ideas of how we can solve that problem. Now, you're going to have a lot of ideas and you're going to have a lot of solutions, but you can't do them all and you don't want to do them all. And this is where you need to identify the highest impact ones. So much like we would do if we were doing kind of product ideation, we would come up with the things that are going to have the highest impact for our users. We can do the same for our operational activities. And you can use something really simple like an effort and impact matrix for this. So you can think about, okay, what are the things that we could do right now, because actually they're really quick and low effort, and they're going to have a really big impact, versus the things that might need a bit more budget or thought or exploration. We can think about doing those things later on. And then you can start to develop a bit of a roadmap. So you kind of start putting your activities on a roadmap, which I'll talk about in a second. So when you've got all your activities and you know the things that might be, you know, high impact from a work point of view, how do you illustrate that to your stakeholders? So how do you get the backing from, you know, your director or the rest of your team to actually prioritize on this work? And the best way to do this is to put metrics against it, which, you know, is a really strong way of showing how these things link back to your company goals. So every business wants to it has key kind of goals that it's trying to achieve. It might be profitability, it might be cost savings. You can take any of those and track it back to what you want to do as a team to solve some of these problems. So in this example, we came up with an opportunity to simplify workflows and improve tooling. And what these things would do is they would increase efficiency. And obviously every company wants to increase efficiency because it means that that increases their profit. So, and they can get things to market quicker. So you kind of map your content solutions against the sort of business needs and business objective. So you've got, we're going to implement a new workflow with fewer checkpoints, or we're going to select a new content management system. And then you can come up with some like really tangible success measures that you can show, like a before and after. So if we have a simpler workflow with fewer checkpoints, it's going to reduce the lead time to get something live. That's really clear because we can say, well, what is it now? And what do we think it will be in 6 months' time? Maybe we can reduce our editing resources. So maybe we had 3 content editors, but actually we might only need 2. Tooling, we can have a new content management system. We're going to spend a lot less time on content production, and we're going to spend a lot less time in the content management system itself. Obviously, there's a cost implication to that because a new tool is going to cost money. So you need to like weigh that up with the efficiency savings, but you can do some like really basic calculations to show exactly what that efficiency cost looks like. So, you know, if you reduce 20% of someone's time doing something, you can easily cost out what that, you know, 20% a day of someone's week, what that costs the business. So then, as I mentioned, you can put this against a little roadmap. And this will evolve because, you know, there's going to be other projects that come up that are more important than some of the ops work, particularly if your team is trying to absorb some of this operational stuff. But it gives you a bit of a roadmap of the things that you want to achieve as a team. And I find this useful because then you can create team objectives around this. So, you know, maybe one of your team initiatives is to create training. Okay, so what can the team do to help organize that? Maybe someone's got it in their personal development plan to do more sharing. Can they run, you know, can they run some content design lunch and learns, for example? So how can you tie this back into what people are trying to do as individuals to develop themselves and their careers, as well as get the team activities done? So once you've got this roadmap, it's a really clear way of sharing with your line managers or with other teams what your team are working on together and why and how they're going to do it, what those activities are. So that's the easy bit. The hard bit is making time to actually do the work. And like I said, a really good way of doing this is to build things into people's objectives. The other good thing to do is like ring fence a certain amount of time a week. So if your team are trying to absorb some of this ops work because you don't have an ops person, could there be like half a day a week that you will focus on some of these operational things? Or could you like have 1 day a month where you just go off site and get some stuff done? So it's really important that you make time, otherwise it just doesn't happen. And I guess that's one of the benefits of having an ops person or an ops role, is that you can really focus on some of this stuff rather than trying to fit it in around the day job. So yeah, if you want to find out more, leading content design has a whole bunch of sort of techniques and tips and more about a lot of this stuff, including kind of how to get together a skills assessment for your team. Also, I run Tempo, which is a community for content design leaders. If you go to leadwithtempo.com, there's more information on there, but it's a really good way to talk to other leaders about how they're finding time to do some of this stuff. We also run kind of panel discussion events that you can just come along to and hear people talking about some of these leadership challenges we face. And I think, you know, some of the challenges we face as content designers and as content design teams are quite unique to our discipline. So it does actually always help to have people that you can ask about things. So yeah, they're my slides. So I'm going to stop sharing and open up to questions, I guess, if anyone's got any questions.